Hello and welcome to the Rangers News YouTube channel. My name is Cameron Willis and I'm joined by Jordan Carlisle after what feels like forever. I think it's been 5 months since we last done a video. Obviously a lot has happened in that space of time, but the idea behind this is that we want to come live, discuss matches kind of after they happened, in the immediate aftermath they happened. I know it's a little bit ironic given the St Johnstone game was at the weekend, yeah, and then also look ahead to games in front of us as the season goes on. We hope that you enjoy it. If you haven't clicked like and you haven't clicked subscribe before now, please do so now. And yeah, we don't want to go too far back into what's happened already this season. We want to kind of talk about what's current. I think the best place to start is maybe with the St Johnstone game at the weekend, Jordan. It was obviously a bit of a tense affair. It was looking like it was going to head to that. It was a hard-fought victory for Rangers, kind of rescued by Captain Fantastic James Tavernier with an absolutely superb strike. But in the match, was there any point when you thought that it was going to be a stubborn point or even a defeat for Rangers?
Yeah, well, absolutely. It was tight enough, wasn't it? And I think we've had over the last couple of years in terms of covering games of there's been a lot of there've been some issues around away games and things like that, and then sometimes it can be a bit slow, a bit pedestrian. And I think normally there's a reaction after the break, isn't there, when something like that happens? That's sort of been the pattern, but there have been slow starts and things like that. And I think St Johnstone, it's a difficult one because they've had such a bad start to the season in terms of the results. They obviously didn't get what they wanted in terms of European football, and things haven't been going so well in the league. But clearly, a lot of the same players are still there from last year, although obviously McCann's gone and the captain's gone. But they've a lot of that core there, and they're still a difficult team to play against. They have a bit of pace, even though Middleton's not the team. He's a main threat, and Halloran, obviously, there was a reason Rangers signed him. Obviously, a few years ago now, it didn't work out for him, but he has the pace to stretch teams, and obviously, I think Hollander got a little bit unlucky, personally, with the fact that he's obviously knocked it onto him. That could go anywhere, but actually falls and controls it and scores. So yeah, certainly, it didn't look. It wasn't a comfortable afternoon, and it probably was never really going to be, was it? Really, after the sort of issues they gave Rangers last year, but yeah, got over the line in the end.
I think I don't know, maybe a few people were a bit guilty underestimating St Johnstone because of all the changes that they had coming into the game. But I think now that probably stands as one of the toughest matches that you'll face in the Scottish Premiership, especially when they play like that, and they were so difficult to kind of break down. There wasn't a lot of clear-cut chances. They defended stoutly. They really wanted to get something. And I think it speaks volumes about Rangers that we managed to eventually get the winner. And obviously, that's that wee bit of class that separated the two teams with the Tavernier goal. But do you think that's going to be a common theme this season? Especially, a lot's been made about like the return of fans and the influence of crowds at these grounds. Do you think that these kind of hard-fought victories for Rangers away from home in Scotland are going to be kind of recurring this season?
Yeah, I think there was probably a point that it got to last year where teams won't admit to this, players won't admit to this, but I think they got to the point where Rangers' momentum was so great, and there weren't away fans and stuff to make something of hostile atmospheres at any grounds, that really momentum was carrying Rangers through a lot of things, and there weren't as many questions posed as maybe there would be otherwise. I think the Tannadice game showed that it can add a different dimension. I think sometimes it can work, differently if you have both ends full of Rangers fans at certain grounds and things like that. There's not the same hostility and stuff there in terms of traditional away games, maybe in other leagues. And certainly there was plenty of support there on Saturday, and normally it's pretty raucous stuff in terms of Rangers away. So yeah, I think it probably depends ground by ground basis, in terms of the size of the club that Rangers are up against, and sort of the vociferousness and the size of their the opposition fan base. But I think Rangers have shown now at this point that obviously they can overcome it. There was a lot of stuff at the start of the season about playing in front of crowds, whether that's Ibrox or away from Ibrox. But yeah, I think you've got a back, and even when playing against sort of blocks and things like that, that there is more quality in the group. And Tav's obviously had a start, like a slow start to the season to an extent. I think he's already got 4 assists, and then that's his first goal. But I mean, I don't know. I've been his biggest fan for a long time. And I just find that I think Nathan Patterson's a great talent. And to be fair, I'm almost annoyed that we're doing this after that happened, because I think he's a great talent, but it just seemed very clear to me that you cannot be like, oh yeah, Tav's had like 2 bad games, or he hasn't beaten the first man with a couple of crosses in a row. We need to get Patterson in the team. I just don't understand that. I think he's an excellent talent, and yet he's already proven that he can play at international level in Europe for Rangers and stuff like that. But Tav is one of the main reasons that Rangers are back where they are right now. He was a massive part of it last year, and that was a proper goal. And I think at a proper time when, again, he's taken on the shot as well, because he had a sitter before that, went relatively close, and he could have shirked that, but they stood off him, and he produced a bit of magic, which was very important, obviously, on the day, and could be very important going forward in the rest of the season.
I think Steven Gerrard touched on that after the match as well, when he said that Rangers are the best fullback in Scotland. I don't think that's up for debate. I think Tavernier is so influential when he plays. I actually thought that, because he did have COVID before it, so it was like, is he actually going to play? What's going to happen there? And he came on, and he came up huge for the club, and he won that kind of those 3 points for us. So it was a big performance by Tavernier. Was there any other performances in the game that kind of stood out for you?
Well, I think it was a little bit slow at times and stuff like that. I thought one interesting just aspect of it, maybe in terms of worth speaking about, is the fact that Roof obviously on pens. I think that's just been a real problem area for quite some time. Tav's shown that he's better than pretty much everyone else in the squad up until this point, but he's not an absolute gun penalty taker. He's had his issues at various different times and stuff like that. So if you have someone else there as well who's capable of stepping up, obviously he's went relatively safe going down the middle. You can't do that every time. You're gonna have to pick a side. But it's interesting it's a good thing to have someone who can potentially, one penalty, could be a flash in the pan, but someone who can prove himself over a period of taking pressure penalties, because a lot of basically everyone else has tried. What Morelos, Hadji, Arfield, they've all really struggled.
Barisic took some as well, yeah.
Barisic did some last year, yeah. And but there've been issues there, so that's good as well under pressure in that sort of situation. That obviously we speak about Tav's winner, but we're not in that position to then go and try and win the game if someone doesn't convert from the spot, and then the pressure mounts a little bit in terms of a home crowd and a restless away support. If you get the half an hour to go and you're trailing, so he nipped the sort of St Johnstone lead in the bud pretty quickly, and I think that's important. He's just at times since he's been up, I think Roof has went through periods where he'll just sort of float through games and not do a huge amount. Other times he looks a different class to a lot of other people around him. And I think we've seen a bit of everything so far this season. But I've been quite impressed about how his actual goal return and how much he's contributing for a guy who's been in and out of the team, especially with the European suspensions. I think I've been really frustrating for him, because obviously, he caused a serious injury last year. It was one of the most bizarre, contacts I've seen, like full karate style, obviously on the Slavia keeper. But he will also feel that he didn't mean to do it, and he's then having to sit out of games the following season, which would have been tough to take. But he's managed to come in and take his chances when he's been in and make some really good contributions so far. So I think he's very important going forward. And Touchwood obviously hasn't actually really got injuries, which were an issue last year and have been an issue in his career. And if he can stay fit, I think he's going to be huge.
I think him grabbing the ball to take the penalty is part of that as well. You want the striker to score, and he is getting goals, and like you say, there's times when he's looked a kind of class apart. Maybe it's his second season at Rangers. Maybe he's going to kind of step up and take that leadership role and scoring goals and being consistent, and maybe hasn't had the opportunity to do that in his career through various things like injury and stuff. So, I'm excited about what Roof can bring over the course of the season, and obviously he's back in the European squad again, which is good news ahead of the Lyon match. Just touching on a play, I thought Joe Rebo was impressive, particularly as we kind of tried to look the gate. We kind of tried to see the game out. I thought that he done really well. I thought that he was good in our box, and he looks like a really kind of powerful, kind of emphatic, commanding presence for Rangers now in the middle of the pitch. And I was just kind of wondering, not just in the St Johnstone game, but in the course of the season so far, what your thoughts on Aribo's kind of progress or any step that he's made heading into the new season?
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with that in terms of, I think he's more willing to be physical. I think that when he first came up, more just a ball player and maybe not that sort of tuned to that side of the game. Also, just like, I think people have talked before, but maybe his lack of coaching, and he's now had, because he came into the game late, and I think he's got that sort of unorthodox style about him, which is really helpful attacking wise. But then he's had to sort of, I think probably the staff have had to instill some sort of positional discipline into him and like a willingness to do other sides of the game. And I think he's coming on really well in that regard. Because I think in pre-season last season, ahead of last season, that looked like he was going to be absolutely brilliant, and then injury sort of held him back a little bit early on, sort of in the campaign. This time around, he had another disruptive pre-season, but I think he's been more maybe like quietly effective at times than I thought he was going to be. I thought when he really, really hit his straps, he was just going to be, everywhere in all action. But I think he still has that. He scored a cracking goal at Ross County, and he has that side of things. But he's also doing stuff and helping the team in both sides of the game. And when he keeps being moved, obviously positionally, which is probably not ideal, but it is giving him sort of a development all over the pitch and an understanding of different roles. He's now getting into sort of his mid-20s, and he should be sort of more of an all-round player. And I think he is a cracker. I think he's a cracker since he came up, but he's been a bit more reliable now, I think, and less of a luxury player.
Just before we move on to the Lyon match, I think probably touch on Philip Haaland. I know he used to have a little bit of crack about the fact that he had that nightmare against Benfica, but I absolutely love the big one. I think he's a great centre-back, but he obviously didn't have the greatest game. And to top it all off, he goes down with an injury, which Steven Gerrard said he was concerned about. I think at the time of recording, we still haven't heard from the press conference, so we don't really know what's going on with him. But heading into the game in Lyon, but not just that, heading into potentially a medium-term injury ahead of what's going to potentially be a medium-term injury for Haaland. How big a miss would that be for Rangers?
Yeah, I think very big. I sort of thought last season that Balogun did a really, really good job, particularly early in the season when he came in. Basically, just finished up at Wigan and he came straight into the team, say for that game at the start of the season at Aberdeen, and he was very impressive. I think there were times though with mistakes that he maybe got away with, and situations where there were some concerns, especially at the end of the season, towards the end of the season, and the Slavia Prague game, stuff like that. So that partnership is definitely less stable than the Goldson Hollander one. I think Jack Simpson still has plenty to prove as well in terms of a backup for that. And then you've got Bassi to fill in. Obviously, Katic is away. Goldson has obviously had his isolation period, but is back now, I think. So that's the main thing. If you were to have no Hollander and no Goldson, that would be serious issues. But I think, I touched on it before. Obviously, it looks bad. He's isolated. He's on his own, and then he ends up flailing about. Like, you can't say that's good defending. I do feel though that like a lot of times, if you manage to get there first and get a little touch, I think he gets a touch with his knee, and then it manages to fall. That's partially by design, partially by luck for O'Halloran, and then he finishes it off. I think he's got the touch and been like, "Oh, I've got the touch, and we're going this way," and then it's come back, which is just left him so off balance. and he looks stupid. But then also, I just think that like he's singled out for that, obviously, and that's fair enough. But also, Balogun had that moment. I can't even remember when in the game it was, but across, across the 6 yard box, and both feet sort of tangled up, and he went to try and sort of
And
almost, it was
Tavernier comes in. Yeah.
yeah, it was almost like, I don't know, he's like almost trying to place it back across the goal, like into the stand. It looked a very muddled piece of defending to me. He got sort of all crossed off on himself, and then yeah, he's bailed out in the end, partially by tap, partially by the finish. And I think it's just football can be funny that way. I mean, like that is as much a mistake as Hollander's one, and he gets away with it. And sometimes that's just the way things work. But I think to say that it's not a miss and Balogun will fill in. I think especially European games, at the Malmo game, I think Balogun really struggled. So it'd be a big test for him against Lyon, and the depth is a bit of a concern if Hollander's out for a while.
Yeah, we'll just move on to that Lyon game now, because St Johnstone game, we got 3 points. That's all that matters, and I think for me, I think that that's going to be a common occurrence this season. I think we're going to have to dig in a lot to get big 3 points away, but it's always that way. But yeah, we'll move on to the Europa League game. What a absolutely kind of tantalising clash it is, the Lyon match. I think that's probably the biggest and best team that we're going to have faced in since in Gerrard's European tenure. I know we've played Porto and Benfica, but I just think on paper that team's got a hell of a lot of quality, and it's going to be a huge big test for Rangers. Obviously no Hollander. There was a report this morning in the Sun that said that Goldson's going to be available after the kind of COVID isolation, so that would be a huge boost. But yeah, what's your thoughts heading into the game with Lyon?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's sort of the big tie of the group, isn't it? In terms of the one to sort of look forward to, and I think it's probably one of the ties of match day one in terms of across the whole competition. I think a lot of people look to it and say that that's just about as big as it gets in terms of matchups. I think when you add in the fact that you would think that the stadium will fill out. I know there's some tickets left at this point, but could be a sellout under the lights. And yeah, it's a big European team. I don't know. I think Porto and probably Benfica as well are on similar level. But I think it'll be a real test, won't it? And it just depends. I think the Rangers that have done so well in Europe the last couple of years, turned over big teams and put in big performances. I think if that team with that same sort of mentality and same sharpness turns up, I think Rangers certainly have a chance. I think so far this season, based on the European performances, it'll be very, very tough. It needs to be another level to those things, because obviously Malmo was very disappointing. There was a lot of factors there, I think, and it's maybe not talked about enough, the fact that it was such a depleted squad, and that was difficult. Obviously, it was then depleted even further with COVID in terms of the Alishkert game, but I mean, that was a much, much lower quality opponent, and that was poor in terms of the performance out there. So it needs to go up a big level if Rangers are going to get anything from it, I think.
It's going to be, but I mean, the big thing for me is that this is the first game of the group, and then after this we go away to Sparta Prague, which I think when we drew them, it was like a potentially kind of just a frustrating draw for everything that might come with it. But the fact there's not going to be any fans in the ground, there's a good opportunity for us to go there. I mean, I read Michael Beale's blog the other day saying there's no easy away games in Europe, which is probably true. It'll still be a tough game, but it certainly gives us a bigger chance, I think, and removes a wee bit of the drama. So if we can get a positive result in this game against Lyon, I think it sets us up for the group very, very nicely. And then after that Sparta game, we're going to a double header with Brøndby. And by the time we play in Lyon, which is the hardest game of the group, the last game of the group, I think that we could be in a really good place. I mean, I think at Ibrox, you've got to back Rangers. I mean, I think it'll be huge. I think the fans will really, really enjoy this game. I think there's some real quality players. I know that it's at the minute it's so confusing. There's so much like kind of conflicting information about who's going to be playing and who isn't, on both sides, on Rangers and Lyon. So, like what they say, like them three boys were going to be out, now they're going to be in. And then they're saying that Moussa Dembele, who I think that, for me, I think it makes the occasion a little bit less interesting. It's only a subplot, and I think probably the Rangers management team and the Lyon management team might see it as a distraction, but I think that it would have added an extra wee bit of spice. But he's apparently not going to be playing. Xherdan Shaqiri, who in the week was talking up Ibrox, isn't going to. So I mean, wouldn't be surprised if both players ended up playing. You know what I mean? Like it's quite confusing. No, but apparently he can't travel because he's not been double vaccinated. So, Shaqiri. So I don't know. I'll kind of reserve my judgment until the lineups come out. But whatever the case, I mean, that Paqueta boy is going to be playing. Brazilian international Guimarães, I think is how you pronounce it. The other boy, he's allowed to play. They've obviously got French internationals in their team. They've got a really, really good team. It'll be a big test for this Rangers team. But I think we can do it with the crowd, and I think that if we show up and we kind of get to the level that we know we're capable of, I think Rangers are more than capable of getting a result against Lyon tomorrow night. So on that, how do you think that we're going to line up for the match?
I think do we want to go through it? I'm actually supposed to be doing a predict 11 later in the day. So do you know what? Before actually we get into anything else, what are your thoughts just to throw this back on McLaughlin and McGregor alternating?
See, that's an interesting one, and I think it worked last season, but McGregor had an injury, and I think that it's that idea of if you have to call on McLaughlin and something happens to McGregor, then he's going to have had a run of games, he's going to be used to playing, he's going to be available, and he's going to be kind of match fit, and I can kind of see the logic. And maybe there's increased competition between them in training and stuff. You don't actually know. Maybe there's a playing justification beyond just a fitness justification. But for me, it is an interesting one. It's like the constant flip flopping's a little bit. It's a talking point at least. It gives people reason to speculate. But what about you?
And I think there are thoughts behind it that could potentially be a thing, but I'm so surprised that it's something that's actually happening. I just don't agree with it at all. To have McGregor being like, I'll commit to playing another season, and obviously he said at the start of the year, I think when he's left out of one game, he was asked, "Is that going to be the plan going forward?" And he was like, "No, it's game by game basis." I'm certainly not aware of that, and to me, it just doesn't make sense to have him sitting there because it's not really backfired yet. But I think you want him as sharp as possible coming into a game like this. You don't want him sitting. Traveling to Perth on Saturday and not playing, coming back. I think the sharper you are, the better. It's not a position where you need to be rested. So, I don't get that.
I think as a whole, it may be kind of indicative of this kind of slow start that Rangers have had. It's all kind of felt, even up to that international break, it all felt like, I don't know, like an extended pre-season. The real intensity behind the matches, behind our approach and stuff. It felt like that was really, really missing, and it felt like all this is still kind of getting people up to fitness and moving things around. And I think that's maybe indicative of where we're at. I think like when in the latter half of the season, obviously McGregor played the majority of the matches last season. I think similar will happen again, but it's a new season. Does it fit the tone of what we're doing? I don't know, but I think in general it's just been a very, very, very sluggish start, and we've been trying to spread minutes around, and there obviously have been disruptions with COVID and injuries and stuff, but I don't feel as if we're really settled or we've had the opportunity to have a run with our best 11, and that's not just including the goalkeepers, but including the entire team. And I think that we felt that in the Champions League. I think that we're feeling it in our performances as well. And I don't know. It's difficult to predict when that's going to settle down as well. But obviously, one position we can't do it in is the goalkeeper position. But it's hard. It's hard to predict when that's going to settle down because it does really feel a little bit kind of too much rotation, too heavy. I don't know. We don't feel exactly settled, and it's difficult to say if any Rangers players really in their stride at the minute.
To me, it does send a bit of a message. I would say about been critical of, say, in the past of, say, away games when the intensity is not there early doors. But I think everyone knows, like John McLaughlin's done a great job since he came in. Everyone knows that Alan McGregor's still Rangers' best keeper, certainly when he's playing regularly. And to me, that would just send a message. We're away to St Johnstone today in the league, must win 3 points, but your best goalkeeper sitting on the bench with his mask on.
I know what you mean.
I just don't get it. But so he should be playing.
He will play. There's no way.
He should be in the team. There's one.
But again, he might have had COVID during that thing. You know, don't know if he was isolating, don't know if he had COVID. But if he did have COVID, you don't know how much of an impact it's had on him either. You know what I mean?
It's just that
he might have been playing because he's not completely match fit to play.
Yeah.
You don't actually know. But I would imagine he'd play on Thursday night.
Yeah. And then I think obviously, and I think probably press conference is literally happening now. But we're thinking that Goldson's back in, so then I think it looks a pretty strong backline. But Barisic, left back,
yeah, I'd play him. I think Bassey's done well, and he's shown flashes of the progress that he's making, and he's improving his delivery, and he works hard. He's not the best in the air, but he's definitely improving, and you can see that improvement almost game on game with him, which is good. But Barisic has got the quality, you know, and he's got that leadership, and he's a kind of player that the rest of the team look to because he delivers, you know, like, excuse the pun, but he does. And if there's a big moment, be it set piece, if there's an opportunity down the left, you know, you do bank on him stepping up in these big games. You know, generally when he toils, it's in games and stuffy away grounds and stuff like that. You know, like, he's a big game player for Rangers, so I'd be very, very surprised if he doesn't play Barisic. Like,
yeah, that I think for me it's pretty much the same as the Tav Patterson debate. I think Bassey's got lots of energy, he's powerful, he's strong, and as you say, he's improved in terms of his delivery and his threat, sort of in the final third. But it's a no brainer to me. If I think for a while Barisic wasn't fit, and necessarily healthy, and the confidence wasn't necessarily there, but I just think that almost seemed to me as well that he needed to run of games to get that. I think maybe just the intensity and the importance of the Celtic game brought that out of him, and the fact that he sort of had to play in that one anyway. So I think 100%. So Barisic, Tav, and Goldson and Balogun.
I'd say so. I think the midfield's a really kind of complicated one. The obvious choice would surely be go Davis, Kamara, Aribo, but we know Hadji and stuff. You know, would Aribo go further forward? You know, what do you think about the midfield three?
Yeah, I think probably the best team in terms of getting the best players on the pitch at the same time would have Aribo in the midfield. Obviously, like Davis and Kamara, no brainers, they have to play. But I think the best to get the best 11 on the pitch, Aribo goes in midfield, but it depends whether you know there's obviously tactics at play here. So whether they think that in terms of, so yes, we've talked about Aribo's development, sort of the fact that he'll now help out a lot more, and he's more sort of positionally aware. But do you go for someone like a Lundstrom even, or an Arfield in the middle to try and just sort of have that little bit more control, a little bit more physicality, maybe that more experience? Certainly a Lundstrom in there, like with all the Premier League experience and stuff like that. Yes, he's made a slow start.
He had a horror show against Alashkert. Like, you know, I don't think a lot of fans have forgiven him for that. Yeah, you know, it's so early, but the Rangers support is so ruthless. Like, you know, you really need to get off to a good start, otherwise you're kind of climbing up a big hill. And after that match, I think a lot of people haven't. But maybe this is the perfect opportunity for him to come in and do what he does best against what will surely be a top quality midfield for Lyon.
Yeah.
You know,
I see at the weekend, there's just sort of thinking about it. Just seems to have, like, I don't know, there's plenty of examples of like how key it is not to write someone off early doors. Barisic is
the main one. Yeah.
There's plenty of examples of that, but I've also just got a sense that, like, I just don't know how it's going to go with Lundstrom. You bring him in, put him on probably a bumper contract with whopper wages because you're getting him in on free, decent sign-on bonus. Here we go. You know, you're going to really improve us, and then he's coming off the bench for wee cameos to see how he wins at St Johnstone, stuff like that.
I thought he did well when he came on though. Like, he put that ball in and stuff, and I thought he done well.
Yeah, like driving forward and stuff like that. But it's whether I don't know. I feel like
you're right though, because that's not why he's been signed. Like he's not been signed to come off the
yeah,
bench and consolidate matches. You know what I mean? He's been signed to be a first team player and use the attributes that he has for in the starting 11. But I think he said it himself. He said that there's a little bit of a kind of adaptation or an evolution of his game that he needs to undergo at Rangers, and I think that he's got attributes to be successful at Ibrox, but I think it might just take a wee bit of time. But I don't know. I'm 50-50. I go to the games with my wee brother, and he didn't like him. I'm like, mate, you need to give him some time, right? You know what I mean? But I don't know. I'm similar to you. It's kind of 50-50, but I don't know. I prefer to be optimistic. You know.
yeah.
So does he go into your starting 11?
I don't know if I can say. I don't know if I can say he does. I just don't know. So if obviously we go forward, in terms of that, in terms of the front three, if you can pack that with attacking players, and then still keep Aribo in the team, in terms of just when you know how dangerous the opponent is, it just probably. But I mean, maybe it's wrong to say that. I mean, Aribo's done a good job in high profile games at left back. I mean, he's done that and filled in before, so maybe there is trust there. I don't think there's any doubting how much Jared rates Aribo.
Yeah.
So, maybe there isn't. Maybe there's just, I trust you. Out you go, do your job in midfield. So Davis, Kamara, Aribo, and who you set up front?
I said it's Davis Kamara rewind. My head kind of, I think that, but like you say, there might be a tactical tweak because we're playing a kind of really technical midfield, and maybe he'll go for an Arfield or a Lundstrom. So I think Davis and Kamara definitely, but the other positions may be up for grabs. And then I think a lot of that depends on whether or not he's desperate to get a Rebo in the team and he wants to play him off the right. But then you're playing, it's like, do you go for like the explosive front three of Kent, Morelos, Roof, or are you a little bit more tactical and aim to keep the ball with the Rebo on the right? But I think two of them positions are taken. I think Kent and Morelos are obviously going to play.
Yeah.
And then it's just them two positions, that one in midfield and that one on the right, regarding who starts. What would you do up front?
I think, I think it's hard to not play Roof. It's not as if there's no precedent for it, but I just think it's hard not to play him. And look at his technical ability and what he produced last year. The Benfica game at Ibrox, unbelievable goal, which is obviously overlooked because it's Standard Liège one, and how mental it was. And in terms of his goal return so far this season, it's really promising. The fact that means you can interchange the players up front, and I think Morelos likes that. He's not, especially if he wants to get in the game and things like that early doors. I think he likes the ability to pull out wide, and then if someone fills in for him, then that makes that better in terms of the team shape, instead of just losing that for him to roam about the place. I think that's such a strong team if you have those three up front and you back it and you go for Rebo. I just don't know whether Jared is very, very good, isn't he, in terms of, and so is Michael Beale and the rest of the coaching staff in terms of setting the team up for results. So that's the thing, they've got a proven track record of it, and a lot of time, maybe more away from home than in other ones, that there will be that setup that is different to the maybe the absolute best 11. Because they'll throw in a Brandon Barker every now and then. Obviously, he's very much in the background these days, but there have been shock selections and stuff.
I remember he played him against Porto and we won 2-0.
I think he played home and away as well.
Yeah.
But
I think that proves that they're willing to make a decision tactically, and not kind of say this is just the raw best 11, which would make me think maybe they'll play Lundstrom,
I think they'll just, the intensity in the ground will just be ramped up if that is the team.
If he plays well, he's salvaged. He's back. He's back on everybody's back on side with everybody. You know what I mean? So I think up front as well. You don't think there's a chance Sakala starts? No.
No, I don't think so.
Scott Wright's another name that people are regularly kind of championing to get more starts. I think at this level, I think he's still got a little bit to go. You know, like I think with the size of the match and stuff, I think you might see him off the bench and stuff. You know, but I'd be very surprised to see Scott Wright start. But obviously, Fashion Sakala is another player that's been signed, no doubt, on huge wages. He obviously has had that. I think it was a groin injury. He said that he was getting pushed too much. I think Gerard said that, but you don't fancy him to be in with a kind of outside bet.
No, I don't think so. I think he, as someone who's probably he could well be most effective as sort of an impact player. The problem is at the minute, I don't think he's had enough minutes outside of that to then be in a rhythm to make much of a difference when he comes on, because it's still, I think, like in the Real Madrid game, he was snatching at chances and things like that. I think he really needs to get a few competitive goals under his belt before he'll feel comfortable. And I think when he came in, I think last year he went through sort of periods at his den where he scored, maybe 5 and 4 games, 6 and 7 games, something like that, and then would go 10 without scoring and things like that. I think he had a couple of those sort of peaks and troughs throughout the season. So I think he's probably, pretty big in terms of being a confidence player. I'm not sure he's had much of a run with the injuries and disruption and stuff like that to actually build up enough to be considered a starter. Just I like you say that Morales and Kemp will play. If fit and available, they will play in any big game. So then you've only really got one position left for him. And then maybe that is 2 all-out attacking. We haven't maybe seen enough of him to see how much he's willing to do defensively. I imagine based on his personality, he'd be willing to do a lot. But whether he's actually necessarily disciplined enough in that or used to doing a job like that is a different sort of kettle of fish. So no, I can't see him coming in the team. But yeah, I also wouldn't rule out him coming on and making an impact. But yeah.
Interesting. So, have we settled on it at all? Do you think it's going to be Roof for a Rebo, basically? I think it's between them and that right hand side. Yeah.
Roof or Rebo and Lundstrom. I think that's.
It's going to be 2 of those 3. Yeah. Awesome. So now we'll move on to this. How do you think it's going to go then?
6-0 Rangers. No. I think. I think Rangers will do really well to get a draw. But yeah, the 2 sort of attacking threats, if true, Dembele and Shaqiri not playing, I think that's a positive. Although Shaqiri only turned up a couple of weeks ago, so it's not as if their playing style is reliant on him. He might not have been started. They've a lot of quality in there. You see, even guys I didn't even realize until yesterday that Slimani was there. Like that's a guy who
£60 million Leicester played for him or something. Yeah, from sport.
Did all right for a while in the Premier. A big lad, like he's going to be a handful with them ball players.
He's got many players that cost £60 million. Do you know what I mean? He's not even playing. I mean, they've got another striker, the boy, the Zimbabwean boy. He's been allowed in. Kind of wary, I think.
Yeah.
He cost £12 million or some €14 million or something last season. It's an expensively assembled squad. They've got. I mean, if I know football isn't like the money isn't the be all and end all when it comes to it, but it just shows you the kind of difference in the budgets that both teams are working with. So I can agree with you. If Rangers get anything out of it, it's a good result. But you've got to back Rangers at Ibrox, man. I can't go into it. I'll take a draw in 90 minutes, but I want to win, man. So I don't know. I don't know, man. Because even then you say like, oh, Rangers going to win 2-1 or something. It's 3 goals. It's 3 goals.
I'm not really sure I can see a clean sheet. But I also think that if Rangers put that team out, and with the atmosphere and things like that, I can't see no goals on the home side of it. I'm going to go 1 each.
See, one each. I think is a safe. I'm going to go 2-1, and I'm going to say Rangers are going to win. It's 3 goals. And it's a tough ask in any match. You know what I mean? So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, is there anything else you want to kind of add before we just tie us up?
No, I don't think so. I think it is. It's kind of. I think enough time has passed now. I think there's that lingering sort of annoyance at the Champions League stuff, which I think is rightly so. After working so hard to get into that position to qualify and get a decent draw. But I think I was kind of concerned. I don't know if concerned is the right word, but about how the Europa League would sort of be seen even before the group stage draw. After the disappointment of that, but I think Lyon's a great fixture to have first up. I think it was Bromby. I don't think the same atmosphere will be there. I think Lyon's a great fixture to have first up. Sort of build things from there, and if Rangers can start well, I think it's a great competition to still be in, and there's a chance to build prestige and still get prize money. I was looking at the numbers today. It's like 3 million to get into the group stage. I mean, that's more than Rangers got from any transfer for about 5 years.
Yeah,
so,
it's about the same as what you get for winning the Scottish Premiership. No, what is the prize money for winning the Scottish Premiership? Be very surprising. Like
probably cinch payments of 50 days.
It'd be about 50 quid, mate.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. No, thank you to RFC 56, by the way, for commenting, man. I was just getting used to this kind of platform. So if you are watching us again, feel free to comment. We'll do our best to add them in. But yeah, thank you so much, RFC 56, for your comments. He thinks it's going to be 2 each and on Thursday and 4-0 on Sunday, when Rangers obviously welcome Motherwell. But that's it from us. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're glad to be back, man. Hope you enjoyed this video. Click like, click subscribe, leave a comment below, let us know what you think, and we shall see you again soon.